Hi guys, if you're afraid of Stormbird or Thunderjaw or Slaughter Spine, here is a wonderful, very strong build for Horizon, Forbidden West with Burning Shores DLC that you will never suffer from any machines and you will melt all your enemies very, very easily. So we will start with this build, we will start with the skills, and after that we will talk about armor, different mods we are using, and our, of course, weapons. So at first you will need to, of course, unlock all the skills, especially if you are playing high, if you are going to play high difficulty. It's not a great deal because you got a lot of skill points during even one playtime, so it's not a great deal to unlock everything if you are doing all the side quests. So it's very, very easy to unlock all the skills, but what we want to talk about is our valor surge, and our valor surge is part breaker. Why part breaker but not something else? Because there are a lot of very useful valor surges in the game. I personally prefer this because it's not only increasing our damage versus components by 85% and damage versus weak spots by 85%, but also it's helping us to it's increasing by 50% chance per hit for valuable scrap to drop, so it helps us to collect different resources in different very valuable materials to upgrade our armor and weapons, but also it's giving us 30% chance of triggering a knockdown on components removal. It's also very, very powerful, very useful tool to foster our ability. Knockdown in almost every RPG when you have an opportunity to knock down enemies, it helps a lot, and Horizon is not an exception. In terms of our armor, I'm using one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion, it's the best armor in the game. It's legendary Quen Marine armor that's giving us a lot of very useful resistance like fire resistance or acid resistance. That's a very helpful, especially acid resistance is very helpful when you're playing Burning Shores DLC, especially later parts when you're fighting with different acid enemies, frog-like enemies. And we don't have plasma resistance. In my opinion, you don't need a lot of plasma resistance, by the way, because you don't have a lot of plasma damage in the game. At least in my playtime, I never suffered from this. Sometimes you will suffer from frost damage, but again, it's not a great deal because you can easily avoid frost shoots from different frosty birds, and you can always use different items to increase your different food to increase your frost resistance. So I never suffered enough from plasma resistance, or I never suffered so much enough from frost resistance to change my armor. So in my opinion, it's much more valuable to have electricity resistance, different piercing resistance, fire resistance, especially fire resistance, and acid resistance, especially on later parts of the game. So it's wonderful legendary armor with a lot of very strong resistance. And in terms of skills, we have different concentration buffs that helps us to shoot weak spots of our enemies, and it's very crucial in this game because some machines are moving very fast, and concentration always helps you to shoot parts. It's save you a lot of nerves time, so concentration is always a good pick. Also, additional stamina regeneration, also never bad in Horizon, and also additional drop shield capacity and valor surge master perk that's also increasing build up valor much faster, plus 100% valor build up. In terms of our weaves, we are using Elite concentration, increasing deep concentration, concentration plus, and concentration gen by 1 level, again additional concentration. And another one we are using is weapon technique, increasing stamina regen, weapon stamina plus, and deep concentration by 1 level. Here, and because our weapon techniques also are very strong, and we will talk about our weapons. You will see what weapon techniques we're also using. They're also very powerful, very strong. I really suggest you to use them whenever they are not on cooldown. In terms of our melee weapons, there are only 2 options in the game, so it doesn't really matter what spear you are using. I'm personally using champion spear because in my opinion it looks much nastier, but still it's the same stats. You can now check it on my screen. Everything completely the same. It only differs in its appearance and its lore top. So whatever you want, when you upgrade till the max level, it will be both spears will be with the same stats. In terms of our main weapon will be, at least my weapons that I'm maining. You can main any weapon from the weapons in our builds, but I personally advise you to main Emperor's Reign. It's Hanse bow. Why Hanse bow, not something else? Will be our main weapon, because Hanse bows, they have very balanced average stats. You may think at the first glance, but still these average stats, they are very balanced and they helping you in any single situation. So you will not suffer. For example, when you are trying to main Sharpshot bow, you will sometimes suffer from very low rates of fire, or playing with warrior bow, you will have very high rates of fire rate, but you will suffer sometimes from range from damage fell off. So Hanse bow is the best pick in any situation, because it helps you to fight any weapons on a very nice, very balanced ranged, with a very balanced, very nice again fire rate. So it's always a very nice pick in any build, in any situation, on any difficulty. And also why Emperor's Reign is our main bow, because it has main armor piercing ammo, and it's giving not only a lot of damage, but also with advanced arrows you also piercing enemies armor, and also it has 85 damage and 335 armor pieces. That's also very good, very strong against both machines and different enemies. And also as a bonus you have Berserker arrows that also helps you to play stealthy when you need to make your enemies mad to fight each other. So advanced Hunter arrows is always a very strong, very good pick. Targets in Hunter arrows, I don't think you will find a lot of use of it, but our main pick in this bow is advanced arrows, because they do a lot of damage, and with our technique triple notch, you also given a lot of damage. You got 3 arrows in a row that's also doing quite a lot of damage, you see. So our second bow, let's talk about our mods, or coils, like they're called in Horizon. We're using stealth damage, because it's a very fighting from stealth. You're doing a lot of damage, especially if enemy is not looking at you. So stealth damage, you will need a lot to play stealth. You will need to play stealthy a lot, especially if you're playing high difficulty. Stealth will literally save your life, so stealth damage, button stealth damage is always a good idea. Close range damage, because sometimes, for example, like Sandajos, they are running quite fast, and sometimes when you want to shoot their body parts, you will need to stand closer and with some other machines, and close damage is also a very good thing when you're fighting such enemies, so why not increasing close damage too. Overdraw damage, increased damage dealt when using overdraw with a weapon, quite obvious why we're using this. Knockdown damage, because with our search we're increasing our knockdown damage, and we have additional knockdown opportunities, so we're increasing our knockdown damage, because we will knock down enemies quite often with this build. And melee follow-up, increasing range damage for a limited time after successful melee hits, also very strong thing, because in our perks, in our skills, we have very nice things, very nice perk. When we're hitting enemy with a fully charged heavy attack, we create a sphere on our enemy, and shooting the sphere we're also doing a lot of crazy amounts of damage, so we additionally increase this damage with this coil melee follow up by 25%. And perks of this bow is stealth damage, again close range damage, no knockdown damage, melee follow up, what I've been talking about with our coils. Another bow we'll be using is also Hanse bow, also legendary Hanse bow, the Sunscorch. And this bow is our additional bow to to shoot our enemies with different debuffs, because for example when you are playing later parts of the game, when you're fighting with these guys very familiar to you specters, at the later parts of the game you will fight a lot specters, and they have two types of resistance. It's plasma resistance, and they have fire shock and purge water resistance, but they don't have they are weak against acid damage and plasma damage. So it's very useful to have some acid damage bows. And again, I've been talking about that Hansa bows are the most balanced bows. This will help you in any situation. So we're using the Sunscorch with acid damage, also doing 69 and 426 acid and corroded damage. It's a very strong bow, very balanced with instant, with a very strong perks, aerial enemy damage, additional reload speed, weather damage, agility damage, instance, brittle chance, additional is also buffing our frost damage. So it's a bow to put different debuffs on our enemies and to fight, to get additional fire, frost and acid damage against enemies with that weak damage, with weakness to that elements, because there are a lot of enemies. Almost every second enemy in the game has either fire damage weakness or frost damage weakness. And in terms of our coils, of course, I use an elite fire, elite frost, elite acid, and additional acid and additional fire, because quite obvious we have fire, frost, and acid damage. We are buffing the damages and buffing the damage. And in general, this bow, it's not something you will main. You will shoot this bow only to make your enemies weaker, to shoot their weak spots with this particular debuffs, and to put these negative status effects debuffs on your enemies. And then I advise you to swap to your main Hunter bow Emperor's Reign and to keep fighting with your main advanced arrows. Also, we're using, for some critical situations, we're using Grave Single Element Sharpshot bow. It's also very strong Sharpshot bows. They're doing quite a big amount of damage, but their downside is their fire rate. Still, they're doing a lot of damage when you need to shoot from a very long range enemy with a great amount of damage. Grave Single Element is the best pick because it's also increasing your stealth damage, multiple enemy damage, overdraw damage, instant brittle chance, and draw speeds. That's also very crucial for Sharpshot bow. And in terms of our coils, I'm using elite critical hits to increase damage even further, elite overdraw to increase reload and draw speed by 25%, as well as overdraw damage by 15%. Reload speeds, because for this bow it's a very crucial. It's Sharpshot bow with a very long reload speed, and also additional impact damage and additional elite knockdown, increasing knockdown power by 15%, as well as explosive and projectile damage against knockdown enemies by 12% and 15% respectively. We've been talking about why, because we are using Surge that's increasing giving us additional knockdown opportunity. And also we're using, in terms of our melee combats, we're using Eye of the Storm Warrior bow, again legendary bow, with frost damage, with electricity damage, with acid damage, because a lot of enemies with frost weakness, and later game a lot of enemies with acid weakness. And it's also very strong warrior bow, but you remember, warrior bows, they have a lot of very fast fire rate, but they have very short range. So it's not something you will main, but it's something you will use to fight with the big trash packs, with the big crowds of enemies. Very strong, again, very useful even against regular foes, regular human enemies, to put different debuffs on them and to shoot them down, to finish them either with your spear or Emperor's Reign. Also very strong bow with additional perks. Instant corroding chance, 6%. It's quite high. Don't look at these numbers. It's still quite high in the fight. 6% can save you. It's proccing quite fast, especially when you are using your acid arrows. And additional concentration damage, overdraw damage, aerial enemy damage, especially when you're fighting with some flying enemies. It's also helping you a lot with different with big packs, with different trash packs of aerial enemies, especially such enemies like sky drifters or something like dreadwings. They're not flying in groups, but with sting spawns in Burning Shores DLC, it helps you quite a lot. In terms of coils, we're using plasma and shock damage, quite obvious why. Shock damage, plasma and shock, again plasma and shock and elite shock, because we have different types of damage, and we've buffed already our frost damage. We have a very strong frost damage and very strong fire damage and acid damage on our Sunscorch, and we don't have enough shock damage, so we're buffing our shock damage on this bow, mainly to have all the types of main weakness, main debuffs you will need to fight mostly all the enemies. And also when you need to finish very strong, very big enemies, like for example specters at the later parts of the game, or my favorite, everyone's favorite, I think, slaughter spines, that are very big enemies, very strong enemies, very tanky enemies. One of the best weapons you will need to have in your arsenal is Last Argument. It's spike thrower that's also doing very a lot of damage. It has very low fire rates, but it has very nice range, so it's doing a very big amount of damage with additional plasma damage. So it's a very strong thing when you need to shoot your enemy from the distance, and when your enemy is a very tanky. If I remember correctly, it's even doing a little bit more. Yeah, it's even doing a little bit more piercing damage than Sharpshot bow. So it's even it's firing with even lower fire rate than Sharpshooter bow, but still it's doing a lot of damage, especially when you need to pierce your enemy when you're fighting a very tanky enemies with a lot of armor. And why Last Argument? Because it has wonderful perks: damage over time, instant brittle chance, again 4%, a little lower than on our Eye of Storm, but still very strong on all the weapons. Brittle chance has only, if I remember correctly, only 4%, like it was on our Sunscorch. Still additional instant brittle chance, overdraw damage, knockdown power, additional knockdown power to increase our knockdown power even further, and stealth damage. In terms of coils, we're using Elite Berserk to berserk our enemies, doing a lot of damage. Again, we are buffing we're using additional Berserk damage, explosive damage, because we are using 1 second please, not Berserk. Yeah, sorry, not Berserk. I just looked different coil, and I'm looking at explosive damage and thinking why here is my Berserk coil. It was wrong coil. We're using only explosive, instant explosion chance coil. We're using explosive damage and explosive damage coils. Yeah, because we're using only explosives. There are no Berserk on Last Argument, only explosive damage. And Elite Plasma coil and knockdown power coil to additionally increase our knockdown damage, our plasma damage, and our, again, explosive damage, because we have also explosive spikes that's also doing a lot of damage against almost all the enemies. And again, spike thrower is a very strong weapon. And the last weapon you want to use, it's a flex spot, but I personally, in the last our 7th slot, I prefer using Specter Gauntlet you get from Burning Shores DLC. It's also very strong explosive damage and piercing damage weapons that shooting into regimes. One of the into modes. One of the modes is some sort of assault rifle, but with a shotgun range, with a targeting ammo, that doing a lot of crazy damage, but its range not great. Still, it's an auto weapon, so it's very easy to use. And the second mode of this weapon is a railgun mode that's doing crazy amounts of damage, but with a very high charge time. So we'll need to charge your gauntlet, and after that you will make, boom, big amount of damage. Let me show you again how it's working. Let's swap to the integrator railgun mod. So you see, you will need to charge your gauntlet, and after that you're doing a crazy amount of damage. So also very strong weapon for different reasons, with explosive damage, armor piercing damage, and with railgun it's also doing a crazy amount of damage, even higher than spike thrower. Best pass thrower, because spike thrower in the game last arguments highly upgraded. So Specter Gauntlet is a very strong weapon, that you can use in different situations, but be careful because it has its own downsides. With a shard barrage regime, it has very low range and very long recharge time. You can see it's recharging quite long in terms, especially in comparison to different bows. And in railgun mode, you will have a lot of damage, but you will need to wait quite a lot until your railgun will be fully loaded to make damage. So here it is, guys. It's everything I wanted to show you in this build. It's a very strong build. You will fight with every enemies on every difficulty with completely no problems. It's literally melting all the bosses, all the enemies in the game. And yeah, here it is. Don't forget, guys, to click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you want more guides, more builds on our channel. Also check different other guides and builds on our channel, like Remnant 2 builds, like different ESO guides, news, and urgent news. And thank you guys for watching this video. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Good luck.